On the night of July 1st, 2025, a telescope in the mountains of Chile photographed a faint dot of light. By morning, the computers had flagged it. The dot was moving fast, 58 kilometers every second. But it wasn't the speed that stopped astronomers cold. It was the path. Everything in our solar system, every planet, every asteroid, every comet, travels in a closed loop around the sun. This thing didn't. Its path was open, a line bent only slightly by the sun's gravity, entering from one side of the sky and leaving through the other. It was not from here. 16 days later, a Harvard professor published a paper suggesting it might be alien technology. The internet exploded. Millions argued over a single question: is it a ship? NASA said no. Almost nobody listened. But the loudest question was the wrong one.
The discovery of an object from outside our solar system is...
Because what this object actually turned out to be is stranger than an alien ship. The telescope that found it is called ATLAS, a NASA-funded survey in Rio Hurtado, Chile, built to spot asteroids before they hit us. A system watching for threats from our own backyard. But what it caught didn't come from here at all. When ATLAS first spotted it, the object was about 670 million kilometers from the sun, out beyond the asteroid belt, and already falling inward. Astronomers traced its motion backward and found it wasn't circling the sun at all. Its path was hyperbolic, a one-way curve through our system, moving far too fast for the sun to ever pull it into a loop. It became only the third interstellar object ever confirmed. The first was Oumuamua. In 2017, the strange, elongated body that started the first alien debate. The second was Borisov in 2019, which behaved like an ordinary comet. One looked artificial, one looked ordinary. This one would turn out to be neither. This one was named 3I Atlas. 3I, the third interstellar visitor. And here is the detail almost nobody noticed. It had already been photographed 37 times, and not one of them was flagged. The brand new Vera Rubin Observatory, the most powerful survey telescope ever built, had caught it again and again in its very first nights of testing, 10 days before anyone announced a discovery. Nobody realized what was sitting in the images. An interstellar visitor captured, logged, and ignored. Only spotted later, when astronomers went back through the data. It had been there in plain sight before we ever knew to look. 16 days after the discovery, on July 17th, a paper appeared with a Harvard name on it. Avi Loeb, a theoretical astrophysicist, former chair of Harvard's astronomy department, and the most famous voice from the Oumuamua alien debate. Because back then, Oumuamua was moving strangely, like something was pushing it. And Loeb had an explanation no one else would say.
This object is pushed by light, and we are currently developing this technology for space exploration. It's called the light sail.
A sail thin enough to be shoved through space by starlight itself. We're building them right now. And Loeb raised the possibility that made headlines.
It's quite possible that this object was a thin light sail manufactured by another civilization.
That was Oumuamua. 8 years later, 3I, Atlas, brought the same question back. Could this one be built too? And this time, the object was bigger. Loeb and his co-authors pointed at its properties, its speed, its size. Early estimates put the core at kilometers across, far larger than Oumuamua. And its path, its orbit lay almost flat in the plane of the planets, carrying it close to Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, an alignment the authors calculated at under 1 in 20,000. They drew comparisons to probes, and they said it plainly in print. The object could be technological and possibly hostile. Authors called it in their own words, largely a pedagogical exercise. And as the evidence sharpened, Loeb's own position followed it.
So you're saying it's doing unusual stuff, but you think it's just a comet?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, given all the data we have, I would agree that it's most likely natural.
But a careful hypothesis in a physics paper does not stay careful on the internet.
Invasion was or humanity might.
By autumn, posts were spreading across every platform, claiming scientists had agreed that 3I, Atlas, was an alien spacecraft, that it was slowing down, that it was heading for Earth. Some posts even gave a date, a surprise attack, in November of 2025. None of it was true. Fact-checkers traced the claims, and the scientists who actually looked found no agreement and no evidence of anything artificial. And the researchers who scanned it for alien signals put it bluntly, 3I, Atlas, looks like a comet and behaves like a comet. In the end, there were no surprises. Its closest approach would be about 270 million kilometers away, roughly 700 times farther than the Moon. But the panic showed a real problem. What scientists actually say and what people end up hearing are two very different things. One paper asked a question. The internet turned it into an answer. And the only way to close that gap was to actually test the object. So the world's instruments turned toward it. Through late 2025, 3I, Atlas, fell in toward the Sun. And almost every instrument we have watched it fall. Hubble measured its core, somewhere between under half a kilometer and 5.6 kilometers across. The James Webb Space Telescope read its chemistry. And as it passed Mars in October, NASA's orbiters photographed it from about 30 million kilometers away, the closest look any machine would get. And the object did exactly what an alien ship should not do. It grew a coma, a cloud of gas and dust boiling off an icy core as the sunlight warmed it. It grew a tail. It vented carbon dioxide and water vapor, the way comets have for billions of years. Radio telescopes listened to it. The search for any signal, any transmission, any technosignature found silence. In November, NASA took the question head-on the record, in a live briefing.
Did any of you seriously, did you take seriously the proposition from some that this could be an alien spacecraft?
It was quick. We were quick to be able to say, yep, it definitely behaves like a comet. We certainly haven't seen any technosignatures or anything from it that would lead us to believe it was anything other than a comet.
The alien story was over. And this is exactly where every other version of this story stops. But the strangest data hadn't even arrived yet. While the internet moved on, the measurements kept coming. And they began to say something quietly extraordinary. Webb detected methane streaming off the comet, the first direct detection of methane on any interstellar object in history, buried in its ice for billions of years, until our sun finally set it free. Then scientists measured its water. Every water molecule carries a chemical fingerprint, the ratio of ordinary hydrogen to a heavier form called deuterium. That ratio is set at the moment the water forms. It is a birth certificate. Every comet, every ocean, every sheet of ice in our solar system falls within one known family of values. The water inside 3I, Atlas, doesn't. It carries 30 times more heavy water than any comet ever born in our solar system. Its fingerprint matches nothing we have ever measured. In 2026, researchers published it plainly. 3I, Atlas contains at least 30 times the proportion of heavy water found in comets from our own solar system. The conditions that led to the formation of our solar system are much different from how planetary systems evolved in different parts of our galaxy. This is water that never formed around our star, water from somewhere else. And the carbon told the same story. Its isotopes pointed not to our solar system, but to an older, colder origin early in the galaxy's history. Piece by piece, the instruments were all pointing at the same conclusion. This object wasn't just from another star system. It was from another time. Trace 3I, Atlas's path backward through the galaxy. And it doesn't move like our neighbors do. Our sun and almost every star you see at night lives in the flat, crowded heart of the galaxy. Astronomers call it the thin disk. But 3I, Atlas, doesn't move like it belongs there. Its path is steeper, the kind that belongs to a second, hidden population, the thick disk. A faint scattering of the galaxy's oldest stars, drifting above and below that bright plane. A region, as one Oxford astronomer put it, that we have never seen up close before. Oxford's team ran the statistics and reached a number that should stop you cold. This comet is most likely older than the Sun itself. Their estimate likely more than 7.5 billion years old. This comet was already old. When our Sun first flickered to life, already wandering the galaxy, before the Earth beneath your feet existed at all, and the newest measurements push it further still, possibly 10, even 12 billion years. If that holds, this object formed within the first few billion years of the Milky Way itself. Older than the burning sun above us. Older than the Earth. Older than every rock on every world you have ever seen a picture of. Think about what that means. Billions of years before our solar system existed, a planetary system formed around another star. It froze its water, that impossible water, into a small, icy body. And then, somehow, it threw that body out into the dark. It has been falling through interstellar space ever since. Through the entire lifetime of our star. Through the formation of the Earth. Through every single thing that has ever happened here. And the star it was born around? After this long, it is probably already gone. We were looking at a ghost. The frozen remains of a world that may have died before ours was born. Very possibly, the oldest thing human beings have ever watched pass through our sky. On December 19th, 2025, 3I, Atlas, made its closest pass of Earth, 270 million kilometers away. It was never a threat. It barely noticed us. By March, it had crossed back beyond the orbit of Jupiter, outbound. The Harvard question, could it be alien? Was not wrong to ask.
Its path is in the plane. It's very well aligned with the plane of the planets around the sun. And it has also unusual materials being shed off it, like nickel without iron that we only find in industrial production of nickel alloys. And so all of this raises the question of whether it might be alien technology.
But the answer only comes from testing. And when scientists tested this one, the evidence didn't point to a civilization. It pointed to something stranger. And the Rubin Observatory, the telescope that had already captured it dozens of times, 10 days before anyone even noticed, is now fully online. Astronomers estimate it could find up to 50 more interstellar objects in the years ahead. 50 more visitors. 50 more chances. By the early 2030s, 3I, Atlas, will leave our star's planets behind entirely, returning to the dark between the stars, carrying its ancient ice with it. It will not pass this way again. It was never a message from another world. It was something rarer. The frozen remains of a star that likely no longer exists. And very possibly the oldest object humanity has ever seen.